Okay, Ivy, are you ready?
I'm here. I'm good to go.
Okay, fantastic. Now we're going to talk about COVID. This is the COVID Talks.
Yep. Going live with Christopher James.
Christopher J, and I'm just going to bring him in here right now. Chris, how
Hi,
are you?
Chris. How are you?
Good to see you. Nice to meet you, Ivy.
Hey, you too. Thanks.
Yeah, so let's just dive in right into it. This is COVID Talks. We're talking about the whole COVID-19 virus and everything surrounding that, Christopher. And so how do you want to start this? We had done the other day, but we weren't really focused on this issue that we're all facing right now. So do you want to maybe kind of lead us into a conversation about all that?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a good idea to pick up on some of the points you touched on in the Warrior talk the other day. And I thought it was quite interesting, your view about when you're asking the question, where did the virus come from? Christopher.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, the virus is very, it's very interesting. I guess we should, I was going to actually send you, Hugh, I don't know if you received already, but the patents for the coronavirus from the Pilbright Institute.
You sent that today?
I sent that probably last week when we were following up for the first time, I think.
Okay. I don't know if we need to bring that up, but okay.
No, but I just want to.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to let you know that I, through the research and that, through the incredible network that we have out there, and that's why it's so important what you're doing here at that channel, because right now we have a really good collective. Again, I've got 20 years of doing enormous research. I've been able to whittle out, where a lot of the disinformations come from, and I've got some really great people with integrity and honor. I've got a whole vault of people that we can go to. But as we've spoken about George Webb, he has really drilled down on this coronavirus. He's really tracked down where it began with the military games. If you look at Fort Detrick and Fort Belvedere, they had bio labs there where they were working on these biological weapons. And that in and of itself should disturb people, why that is happening in our countries.
Sorry, Ivy, but I even heard stories like that they were working on something like this in Winnipeg at a biolab, and I've heard numerous theories about whether it was man-made or natural, or if it was man-made, where it came from. I heard maybe it was done in Wuhan. Ivy, you wanted to say something?
Oh, I just wanted to tell the guests who are tuning in live right now, Christopher James, could you introduce yourself? You've got 20 years of research. And just tell them a little bit about yourself. So as we move into this topic about the biolabs.
I first met Hugh surrounding law. And a long story short, my life's work, 30 years, came to a head back in 2003, when I guess you could say the curtain was pulled back. And I was actually shown what is really going on in this world. When that happened, I vowed, because it was my life's work and it was an incredible initiative, I vowed to find out what is going on in this world. So that began me on a journey that started out with law. Then I got into fraud with dealing with law enforcement through commercial lending, which opened up a whole plethora of seeing people being wronged and harmed. And I've always wanted to help people. That's what my global initiative was about. So when that happened, that was my life's work. So you have to understand that this was very personal for me. Everything that I worked towards, all of a sudden I'm realizing that how the world works, it doesn't. So that led me to this enormous research to find out what's going on. And through that process over the last 20 years, I've acquired an enormous amount of knowledge, an enormous amount of facts and truth. And I've been able to drill it down simply. So when we're talking about solutions, it comes straight to the public courthouse under common law. And the coronavirus that we're talking about here today, it's the same solution for everybody. Okay, people like myself that have this knowledge, I'm just going to say this off the top of the show. We just require access to our public courthouse. So go to awarriorcalls.com. It will educate everybody on what's happened to you. And through, again, all my research, the dots start to connect. And I've been following, as I've mentioned on the show already, the principles right now that are aware of coronavirus, this COVID-19, that are really on top of it, as far as I'm concerned in the world, is George Webb. He's an incredible man. When you can go to his website and look him up on YouTube. He's been doing this for 4 years, and he started out with something very much more nefarious. But again, all the same principal players as you're going to learn from George, who I've mentioned to Hugh. I believe it's paramount that we bring him onto your show, along with Jason Goodman, because we need to establish a network outside of the mainstream network.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And now your research, now you were just talking about the biolab. So tell us a little more about that.
Well, as you mentioned, in Winnipeg, there's a biolab that's out there, and I'm not an expert on the biolabs. Again, I have learned all of this from George over the last several weeks. He has a group of people that have drilled right down. They've drilled down to the very officer that brought it to these military games. For people that don't know, in Wuhan, China, if you look at it from an economical engine, you would take Silicon Valley and you would take Detroit and you would put them together. It's a powerhouse. It's a very powerful country, or pardon me, it's a very powerful province within China. But people need to understand that it was one of the first provinces to go fully 5G.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. It was the first. It was the first.
That's right. The first.
I think in the world, not just in China, but in the world.
That's right. And so that's why this COVID discussion, it's not really simple. So you have to start with the key basic facts first. You want to know, where did this virus come from? Well, when you do the research, and I will send the links to Hugh, you will find the patent came out of the Pilbright Institute. Now, this is an institute in Britain, okay? That falls under the Queen of England, actually.
Right.
And they've had this patent.
Institute.
That's right. So when people look at the actual patent, you can see that this has been around for a while. Now, what people don't realize, and this is all part of this massive corruption that's going on, is that the U.S. Patent Office is controlled by Serco out of England. And
now, are you saying this is a patent for the virus?
That's right. It's a patent for the virus. They're showing you that they've been working on this for a long time. And supposedly there's multiple different patents, because every time somebody manipulates the strain or whatever, for whatever nefarious reasons that they're using it for, it gets another, it's COVID-19. So I believe there's another 1 through 19 before that. So what has happened, what George has brought forward, is that this COVID-19 virus actually came from one of these labs, from Belfort or Fort Detrick. And the top people there got sick. What happened was the CDC found out that, I guess they oversee these biolabs, that they were not ensuring that the security of what was being created within the facility was being contained. So this all got shut down back in September, from what George is reporting to everyone. And this is in the United States. And at that same time, there's a woman that was going back 4 or 5 times from Canada that I believe the RCMP was looking at, from the Winnipeg lab as well, to Wuhan. So how this virus, the way it appears, it looks like it came from North America over into China. They brought it over through the war games, the military, I should say, Olympics. That's when 250,000 military people from around the world, they conveniently all came to Wuhan back in September, October for these. It's like the Olympics, bike riding and stuff. Mm-hmm. That's how it appears that this virus was brought into that community, because that's why the pattern doesn't look. It's strange how it's popped up all over the world.
Yes.
So it's very, and that's why we need to bring George in on this, because he is truly the expert on it. They've dug down, they know the names, the Benassis who are tied to this particular virus, the doctors. He's been looking for the very first patient that's been confirmed that had it. And I believe they finally drilled down to that person.
Now, how do you think that the 5G, which Wuhan is the first province to implement that, how do you think that 5G relates to the virus coming out of the Pilbright Institute?
Can I elaborate on that question a little bit? Because in some of the, I hate to call it studies, because it mostly involves watching YouTube videos, but from what I've seen, and I think this is one of the videos you sent me, Christopher, is that and how it relates to the 5G is that the 5G actually is poisoning the cells of our bodies, and then our own immune response goes to that. And people that have heavily compromised immune systems, but the virus could actually is almost like coming out of our own cells. Like it's because the coronavirus is a very common virus.
It's type of pneumonia.
Everybody's almost got it. That's why I hesitate to get a test, because you test positive and they're going to lock you down. So, Christopher, can you respond to how does the 5G relate to the virus?
Well, the 5G, if you even take it back a step, the 5G is no different than the smart meter. Okay. What you learn from an incredible doctor and one of the links that I sent, and for everyone that's seeing this, I have a YouTube channel and a website, awarriorcalls.com. The YouTube channel is A Warrior Calls. Please go there for the pandemic stuff because I have not uploaded that to my website. That is only on YouTube at this moment. And I have 4 very powerful videos that are there. It's funny, Hugh, that the first one that I put there from the gentleman that I got it from out of Australia, brilliant young guy, when you listen to him speak, it got yanked a few days later out in Australia because I believe he had used at the top of it, which I had cut out. He had some Cartman stuff from one of the cartoons there. So he got a strike, probably copyright.
Well, you know what? Well, I think one of the other videos he sent me that I found to be the most compelling in terms of drawing the connection between 5G and coronavirus. I watched it, I think, 2 nights ago, and then I went to look at it yesterday, and YouTube had pulled it down. But anyway, I've got it ready to run.
That to me.
I've got it at you know, when we finish our conversation at 3, I'm going to run this video, and
Nice.
just as an adjunct to what we're talking about.
Okay. So if I can, and I would first like to say is that I'm not a medical doctor. Okay. So everybody knows this, but I also want everyone to understand something is that, as I said to Hugh, is why I've come forward when people, if you're asking for my opinion, I'm not here to give opinions. Okay. We are at a time right now in this world where the people require facts. Okay.
Yeah.
Hard, concrete facts. So you're trying to drill down on this COVID-19, which has been put out there in a singular capacity to the media, so to speak, to the world. Okay. But there's much more that circles around the COVID-19 when you're asking, you know, we can talk about where we're able to find out how this got to Wuhan and then how it eventually made its way back to various countries. That's one very actually small aspect of it. But what people need to understand is that all of this wireless technology that is all around us, that's why I take it back to the cell phones, you take it back to the smart meters, it's all doing the same thing that Hugh is just referring to surrounding 5G. People are being told, you know, 5G is a wonderful technology. It increases all these speeds. And that, yes, it does. But what they do not realize is if you look and research a man by the name of Barry Trower, and this is why I've got all these people still that U2 has dragged down. A gentleman in Canada here, his name was Jerry Flynn, incredible, who came out from the military, and he went to Harper twice back in the day surrounding the smart meters, and they wouldn't listen to him. So it's all the same truth with these electromagnetic fields that we have around us, be it cell towers, be it smart meters, be it now 5G. Our bodies are not meant to be in these type of environments. And 5G, from everything that I've learned about as Barry Trower, like these are military people that have impeccable credentials, are telling people that they know the damage that wireless does alone, never mind 5G.
Well, 5G is military grade technology.
Yes.
Well, it's apparently one level below military as a weapon, one below weapons grade. And the other thing, the former president of Microsoft Canada, whose last name is Clegg, I forget his first name, but he's actually formed an organization to try to stop 5G from rolling out in Canada. And obviously there's a guy who's acquainted with who wants business to work, right, as a former CEO, but he's concerned about the health impacts of this new technology that, being in his position, he knows more about than almost anybody.
Absolutely. It's great you brought that up, Hugh. Please, people, I'm not pushing my site, but I've got a section for 5G, and the Microsoft president, he's the first one there. Okay. And I think I've got 7 or 9 videos that are uploaded. If you want to learn about the dangers of 5G, it's right there for you for professionals. That's why I brought the website out, to help people quickly get to the truth.
And what is the name of the Microsoft president again?
I think it's Frank Clegg.
Frank Clegg, correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And again, I tried to look for that website. I believe it's still on YouTube, but again, it's a one-stop shop. That's why I created the website for everybody. So you can go there to help get the foundational knowledge that we need to really all engage in this conversation now with the 5G.
Yeah, so people can find more information on awarriorcalls.com.
Correct. Yeah. And please sign up, please register, sign your name with an email. That way we can keep you up in the event that they pull the channel down, because I am literally bringing truths forward that this world is not supposed to see. And I knew a long time ago what was going on with this technology with 5G, that there's something much more nefarious going on with it. And from what I've learned about it, from the latest upload that I did, that I've known about the Dr. Sean Cowan for a very long time. He is a brilliant man, and he explains to everybody simply so you understand what the 5G does. Now, it's not just 5G where this is going. 5G, as Hugh was just talking about, it's right at that military level that's right there, just below it. But 5G is the starting point. It goes to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And when you get up to 12, you're talking literally about, see, this is where the topic gets very, people need to understand that all of our bodies are electrical fields. We're electrical, everything evolves on frequency. When you take a pill, when it dissolves in your body, there's a frequency that's associated to that. When you learn about Royal Rife, the man that cured cancer, he was able to cure all cancers back in the early 1900s. And you say, well, I never heard about this. Of course you didn't. What he had in his lab, to make a long story short, is he had all the petri dishes with all the cancer cells, and he had a plasma bulb there. And as he was turning the plasma bulb, remember, it's frequencies he's moving across. When it hits a specific frequency, it broke the cancer cell. And all of a sudden, your immune system went, there you are, and then it cleared it all out. He took, I think it was a total of 16 patients that were terminally in stage 4 cancer. They only had a couple of weeks to live, and within 2 months, and he only treated them once a week for 5 minutes with these frequencies, completely non-invasive, completely harmless. And that frequency, just using a plasma bulb set in front of the man or woman, managed to take that all out. Now, people that want to look into that technology now, look up Spooky 2. So that's all in that same frame, but it all comes down to frequencies. And this is what the doctors are telling you, because what 5G actually does is it affects the oxygen, okay, and it affects the water to blood relationship in your body. It's very, very dangerous for our bodies. They're not meant to be able to deal with this type of frequency. And I'll switch over when I talked about Barry Trower again. Barry Trower from the military told people years ago that we can have wireless technology, all these things that they're trying to implement, but they can be using safer frequencies, different, from what I understand, different scalar wave in the algorithms and how they're creating all of this network around the world they could be using that they know protects the people.
Now, what more can you tell our viewers about the frequency? I mean, I've heard as well, we are over inundated with frequencies in any major metropolis city, and we've prior to obviously most of us are running on 4G right now. You were saying in a military grade it goes up to 12, 13, I think a few minutes ago. But so it disrupts the water oxygen level in our cells. Can you talk a little bit more on how the higher frequencies do affect thinking, what the military uses it for, things like that?
Yeah, I can make it real simple for people so you understand, right? We're not screaming Chicken Little here, the sky is falling. It's already fallen, okay? So 5G is like a microwave. That's all you have to understand. Would you sit inside a microwave and have somebody turn it on? This is what people need to understand. This is the power of 5G technology. So when you're getting up into the higher levels, as I've learned, and there's a Chinese PhD physicist that I've also sent to Hugh a link on that we're going to try and get him and his associate on, who are really at the forefront of this as well, because they really explain the higher levels of 5G. Because when you understand, as Hugh has covered in a lot of talks before, you've talked about chemtrails. Okay, chemtrails, they've been doing this for a long time now, and that's been spewing what? Aluminum in the airwaves. We've been breathing in all this aluminum. It is all within our bodies now, like it shouldn't be. And what is aluminum? Aluminum is a way in which 5G is able to connect to and operate through. Okay, so this is where you need to.
So we've basically been breathing in, for those with chemtrails who believe in chemtrails, and we've been breathing in extra additional amounts of aluminum for 20, 30 years or more. Yep. And now it's set us up.
If I could just add to what I've heard about what that's really all about and how it relates to 5G, is that there's nanotechnology in the chemtrails, supposedly, that when it comes into our bodies, it creates, they've assembled themselves into little nano robots that are in our bodies that are communicating or have the ability to communicate when the 5G network comes in, information about us as individuals, right? And this goes into I know it sounds crazy, right? But this is just what I heard.
Well, it doesn't. And that's why when you have, if we can get that PhD gentleman on and his associate, which she talks about, and again, that link is on my is on my YouTube channel.
You're talking about Professor Hamamoto?
Hamamoto.
Yeah.
And what was the girl's?
Lena Poo.
Yes. And again, they've done 2 interviews with McDuff. And
Yeah, I've seen those, and I have a lot more questions for Lena about the research she's done. I mean, she's talking about Nazis doing research into AI, like back in.
Yeah, that's actually true. Yeah,
you know about
I've
that?
read on that.
You did?
Yeah, I've read about that.
And of
Yeah,
course,
and facial recognition and AI technologies began in the 20s and 30s.
and we know the Nazis really won the Second World War, and they got Washington to capitulate in 1952, and they flew their flying saucers over Washington.
No, I don't believe in that.
So there, I know it sounds crazy, and I say it like a joke, but it's actually not crazy, maybe. Okay,
Well,
great.
what is happening right now in the world is, in a sense, crazy. However, I do believe this is pre-planned. This is all about society control, and the bottom line is that there's too many dots connecting, even with major CEOs who have resigned from their posts around 2015, 2016. The 2008 recession was just a precursor to this global economy crash. I think, as Chris mentioned on a previous episode on that channel just 2 days ago, I absolutely believe that this is all about societal control. Like I've talked about that openly, and everything is framed for, this is for your safety.
Yeah,
and I'm also very concerned about the prospect that money will be eliminated, and that we are risking becoming a welfare state.
Well, dependent on the government for everything, and if we don't do what they want, like take the vaccine,
Yes.
then we don't get the money. So how,
and even with the COVID testing, I would, people have been voluntarily uploading their DNA to sites like Ancestry.com for about 15 years. Yeah. I mean, talk about I am so against that. And it's done as if it's a fashionable thing. I mean, really, I'm sure it's interesting to know your heritage, but it's just wrong. I find it nefarious. And now, I mean, I wouldn't even trust the testing for COVID. I mean, the nose swabs, this and that. I mean, they want people's DNA, in my opinion. And that's not based on very much. But again, with the testing, and then if it's so easy to test for at the airports, they're testing your temperature and doing a nose swab. I mean, come on. Then how is it that people continued over the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks? They started testing people landing at Pearson 3 weeks ago. Then, I mean, the quarantine measures could have been a lot more successful. And if it's so easy to test and expedite and find out who has it, who doesn't, not to mention in South Korea, they've tracked, they basically had the entire population have an app on their phone and voluntarily agree to be tracked to see if they've come in contact with someone who has COVID, this and that. And now South Korea is being praised for having gotten the virus under control so quickly. And I've heard that that app is also being pushed forward in the United States currently. I mean, all of this to me screams state control. Even on the fact that Trudeau wants to stand behind the people who don't qualify for EI, then why isn't it an option to opt out of paying EI when you do have a part-time job if you can never get a cent of it? And all of a sudden, so you want to help all of the people, you're aware that the majority of Canadians exist within this minority that will never qualify for EI? And you want to help and give them money? I mean, obviously you wouldn't want that percentage of the population turning against the government, but on the flip side, people don't need to be in so much poverty. Everything, I feel, is just an excuse, because once you're getting the money from the state, they can dictate where you spend it.
Yeah.
So these are concerns I have.
Yeah, it's I want to get back to Krista. I don't want to have this conversation derailed, but all these points relate to each other, Krista.
And the society control that Chris was talking about.
Yeah, and so take away kill the private sector, kill anybody that has the ability to add wealth with their business and be self-sufficient. Yeah. And then streamline kill the economy, and then let Amazon. We only need Amazon and maybe a Walmart, right? We don't need all these mom and pop shops. Okay, Chris, back to you. I don't want to derail the conversation here because we only got about half an hour left. Of course, we're going to have you back lots more. So lots of room to talk about these topics. But
yeah. Well, the 5G, if we can just get back on that for a second, you know, you're right. It is very deep, and this is where it's very frustrating for me because I've been blessed. I'm so glad to even still be here for the last 20 years of everything I've gone through. But the journey that I've gone through, people in this country have not done, and I've been able to be exposed to all of this underlying multiple facet, you know, things that are going on around the world. So I understand simply what is really going on. And that's why I said to everybody, I say it here again, I make the claim, I have the solution right now, and I just require access to that public courthouse. People need to learn the common law. And the 5G, again, that's where all what we're talking about here, that's when that evidence gets brought out into a court. And that's when we can stop all these things that are happening right now. It's never going to stop by us looking into the system that's already around us, because the 5G, once it starts to elevate up, what you learn about technology and that everything is based on frequency, it's absolutely fascinating. You know, I've cured my Lyme disease using the spooky equipment, and that is all frequency related base. Those are frequencies that are good frequencies that they know and how to address various different diseases. But they also have frequencies like the 5G, and once you start going up, that are nefarious, that are dangerous to us.
Okay, so are we now talking about, you know, solutions to this situation that we're in, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're just the spooky thing, whatever, and I totally believe in that. I built my own machines, which Ivy's had the chance of using.
Yeah.
But that's a solution to the virus if it's a virus. But we got a bigger problem, and that's the whole 5G matrix.
Oh, totally. Right? We have to find a way to stop the implementation from this from being rolled out. See, as you always learn in history, is that when there is an event like this, or this is a false flag, there's no question about it, okay, what they're doing here. You have to watch what they do in the background. That is the key things. What are the big players doing in the background? And many of people just don't realize that just last week that, what's his name from, I can't believe I forgot his name, the car guy, not Mulan.
Oh, but you're talking about Elon.
Elon. I always want to say
Elon
Mulan.
Musk.
Elon Musk. I got the E and the M in there, right? Sorry about that.
He's Canadian.
Yeah, last week the FCC agreed.
No, he's South African, I think.
Yeah. Anyways.
Okay.
Well, last week the FCC, this is what people aren't seeing in the news, has agreed to move forward with immediately 1 million low-level satellites in our atmosphere. Now, who the hell gave those people the right to do that? And this is when you start to understand, because they're talking again with these low-level satellites, that they are going to be transmitting what? 5G. Okay, they're going to blanket the entire world. See, they've got to do that because 5G requires line of sight between the towers. That's why after the fires that went down in California there last year, they started ripping out there's a whole thing about that with the 5G as well. With the new infrastructure they started putting in, they started ripping out all these trees to allow lines of sights for things. So this is what people need to understand. It's so much, as Hugh knows, because Hugh's been involved in this, and I imagine you yourself for years, you know, learning about this knowledge and researching. People, when you hit them with this all at once, it is way too much. So we have to keep it simple. You need to know. That's why go to my site. I've got really simple videos there from doctors that will cut through all the BS. And you can start to understand how 5G works and why we don't require it in our world today. We've got plenty of speeds right now that's going on. And as you said, the whole, like, when we're born in this world, you're born into a crime scene, okay? Because it is an ongoing crime against humanity that they've been always moving forward throughout history. And that's what's going on here. They're looking to move things up to a whole new level here. And the virus, to be blunt, is nothing more than a front in order to cover up the financial crash. And you're going to hear it here first. This is, I'm not trying to scare people. They're going to pull out the stops. They're going to throw everything but the kitchen sink at us now to bring about the chaos in order for the people to beg for the governments around the world to save them, be it economically or whatever other, you know, thing that they're going to be throwing at us. Because you watch, you're going to start seeing earthquakes occurring. Okay, you're going to start seeing maybe possible terrorist attacks. They're going to do whatever they can to keep this dialogue going. Why? Because the body count is not going to come forward that they're claiming this is such a pandemic. I mean, there's 101 yesterday, people. I think it was the total in Canada. Why do we shut down a country for 101 people? I don't mean to belittle what they died, but start showing us the numbers. who's doing the testing? When you talk about the 5G tests, well, isn't it the same people that are going to be bringing out the mandatory vaccines that created these tests? And I'm hearing that they're 80% false positive, as Dr. Sean Cowan talks about. If you take a sample when they're doing it in the testing lab, and I guess they put it in those cycle machines, if it spins at 30 cycles, the tests are variants. But if they spin all of them at 60 cycles, everyone comes back positive.
Yeah, I just want to point out to the viewers quickly that Elon Musk also runs SpaceX, which, so in regard to the satellites you were mentioning, and I am concerned about mandatory vaccines coming out. They didn't have them for, I find it suspicious, for both SARS and H1N1. They were not pushing vaccines. And I was just reading a piece from Pathologist yesterday where he's talking about, oh, this isn't going to stop until we get a vaccine. So one of my concerns, absolutely. Go ahead, Hugh.
Just to put the death, the death rate from COVID-19 in perspective, in the U.S., there's about 2.8 million people die every year of every cause, right? And we're all going to die anyways. So, I mean, compare that figure, 2.8 million people die in the U.S. from all causes every year, to the death rates that we're seeing with, and does that truly justify shutting the whole economy down and essentially making people prisoners in their own home? It's not that bad yet, but every time Trudeau speaks, I'm just watching out for, the next little liberty that will be taken away.
You always follow the money, Hugh, as you know, and many people won't realize that this bailout started out at 2.2 trillion. Then there was another $4 trillion that was added. And then I heard Trump was looking for another 2 more trillion yesterday. But people need to understand this simple fact. The $4 trillion that was created over top of it, where did that money go? It was given to the central bank, the Federal Reserve. And guess what they've done with that money already? They've given it to who? All the banks that are basically insolvent around the world. They've just propped them all up again from all the financial corruption. That's what people need to focus on. That's why they're doing all this. We know Trudeau couldn't manage a lemonade stand, and yet he's able, with his group of people under him, able to come out with this incredible bailout package. They've already figured out how they're going to support everybody in the various different levels within the economy, being self-employed to not employed, as you were talking about, to corporations. They figured out how they're going to protect everybody. This has all been a rouge, and that's why when you turn on the U.S. news, it's always, this is a war, this is a war. Well, now it's coming out a lot. People need to pay attention. People are uploading. They're going to all their hospitals. And this is what I would say to people in Canada here today. If you're looking at this, do your duty. Get your cell phone, go for a beautiful walk, go down by your nearest local hospital and take a look, see what's going on, and report that back to us.
Absolutely. I just want to come in here and ask the viewers, perhaps they can participate and like this video when you do watch on YouTube, add your comments. And I want to point out, on an optics level, when every time Trudeau talks, or any other politician, just asking people to take a look at the fact that they're not wearing any protective gear, not a mask, nothing, yet they will be surrounded, often flanked by people in hazmat suits. So just something to think about. I'd want to know what people think about that on an optics level. How come the politicians, if this is never protected, yet they're surrounded by people in protective gear?
Yep. And I always focus people with research, as I teach people, is you don't take people's word for it. Look at the facts. We're talking about awakening people to their critical thinking. Look at the numbers that are going on here.
I've heard the hospitals are empty.
They are. You could shoot a cannon off in them. So
it could still be early days, because I think if you believe the mainstream narrative, like, we're really still at only the beginning.
That's what they want people to do, because why? They've got to keep kicking the can down the road, Hugh, because they've got their militaries in place now. This is the next. They're using the military right now to say they're coming in to help the towns and that with the hospitals with this massive pandemic. No. It's something much more nefarious that's going on, because the people are going to lose it in a few more weeks here. They're not going to handle this being locked down. This goes against everything you feel that's natural in your world.
Okay, Christopher. So, I mentioned that interview we did with a friend of mine who lives in China, and he's saying, 3 months after the worst of it, things are getting better. People are out and about. They're socializing. They're all back to work. They're playing hockey. Yep. I mean, so are things going to be like that here? I mean, why aren't they continuing the lockdown in China then?
Well, let's just talk about Mexico and Brazil. I love the president of Mexico. Look what he's done. He's told everybody this is a joke. And he's right. Everyone out there is still acting normally, working. Are they seeing a pandemic, a massive increase that's going up? No. Same with Brazil. Brazil's president, I'm going to upload it onto my website and YouTube channel, but they're out there telling their people, because they know that this is all not true. Even there's one, I think it's the Croatian president that's part of the European Union. He's broke ranks now. He's saying, I'm not going to do this to my people to destroy everything that they've worked for all their lives in our economy based on something that is nothing more than the mere cold. Now, I don't want to belittle what that COVID-19 is, because we also know, supposedly, that it's weaponized, like there's different variant versions. So when they've got everybody sitting at home, are they just waiting to drop a few more things to be able to trigger these things to go? We don't know, but the one thing that you do know for sure is you cannot believe the mainstream media.
Yeah, one thing that draws a friend of mine who is Italian called Italy the other day, spoke with his cousins, and no, they don't. They said things are normal there, and they don't know anybody who has COVID-19.
Do you know what city they were in?
No, but I can find out during the course of this call.
It would be interesting if they were in Milan. That would be.
Yeah, it was outside of one of the major cities.
Yep.
That much I know.
Okay.
And again, as you know, with Italy, right? The 5G was also where it broke out in Italy is what? 5G has been set up, just like Wuhan. So these are the things that people need to look at. And it gives you this, from what I've learned, and hopefully we'll get some of these other more knowledgeable people with the MDs and that behind them that are truly heroes in this world. They will tell you what this 5G is actually doing to your body, right? And that's why they're saying they're noticing things that aren't quite correct. And they actually noticed this different type of flu back in September and October. It's been written in the paper, and it's been tried to been snuffed out because the mainstream media is saying, no, the first cases we ever heard of were in December and January. That's, again, what George Webb is bringing true, because now the mainstream media is trying to do a hit piece on George Webb, saying he's a conspiracy theorist, etc. So he's come back and he's showing the world, nope, this is our research. Here's the evidence. These are the people that are involved. And he's brilliant. And this is what people need to see.
Yeah.
They really got to wake up to the truth. And that's why I thank you, Hugh and Ivy, for all that you're doing here at that channel, because without your channel, what you're doing, I really think that you are more important than the CBC right now, Hugh. And I think you need to grab a hold of this really by the bullhorns, and you need to really be broadcast. Let's forget all the other surface stuff that's going on. Like, we got to drill down and get the truth to the people.
Yeah, and I just got through here. It's the Abruzzo region in Italy.
Abruzzo region.
That's where your friend is?
Yeah, where his family is.
I'm going to look that up.
Yeah, let's see how close it is to one of the major centers.
That's great. And if we can get people here, like you said, Ivy,
I'd like, yeah,
get out there and take pictures and go to by the local hospitals and walk in them. You don't have to film inside, but walk in. Hell, even have your phone on and get that video footage, because our brothers and sisters to the United States, to the south of us, they're doing this. And one guy's going right across the country.
I've heard about the videos in New York State, and the hospitals are empty. I know in Oakville, just outside of Toronto, the hospital is fine. Yep. And in Abruzzo region, apparently things were normal. Nobody knew anyone who was directly sick. And what I would ask the viewers is, if I just find it's kind of, we all know somebody who's died from cancer, for example. Yeah. How I haven't heard of anyone who says, I know, like, my brother, my sister, my mother, whoever, my partner's mother at the time of H1N1 had H1N1. For a fact, she was diagnosed, had it, and then it was a long recovery. I mean, I haven't heard anybody say that they know someone who has COVID. So I'm encouraging people to come forward, because it seems everything is hearsay.
Well, we know.
Yeah,
we know the Pope. Sorry, not the Pope. Prince Charles.
Justin Trudeau's wife.
Sophie, she's got it. Just a little.
But hang on, Hugh. You gotta remember, you gotta take this all with a grain of salt. Really, they've got it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm mentioning it.
You notice how Netanyahu, all these criminals in the world, Netanyahu's got it. Oh, he's in isolation. Boris Johnson, oh, he's got it. Trudeau's got it. He's in isolation. Come on, people.
But he's not wearing protective gear when he goes on, and the reporters are only a few feet from him. I mean, come on.
Maybe they do have it. So let's be reasonable. But it got sort of smack of a PR campaign.
Yeah, I know. But where's Abruzzo?
It's not near Milan.
Okay.
It's south. It's on the East Coast. It's almost not. It's not as far away from northern Italy as you can get, but it's pretty far away.
Okay.
Just to be honest about all that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
at least this is real, honest news where we're actually critically asking questions and thinking about all the different angles and things that we're presented with.
That's right.
That is the difference with independent media. There is no agenda behind this other than talking openly, thinking critically,
Yeah.
sharing ideas, and comparing information, which at this time is extremely conflicted all across the world.
Yeah, and I just find that the kind of censorship, the level that Google's doing on YouTube, and everybody seems to be doing it now. And in fact, they were told to do that because they, after Trump was elected, basically, right, and the whole fake news controversy got going, there were hearings in Washington where senators and congressmen were grilling the senior executives at Google and Facebook and LinkedIn, and accusing them basically of creating all this fake news or providing an environment where fake news could thrive. So basically, they were told by the U.S. government that they can't do that anymore because look what happened. Trump got elected, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as you know, truth is the first casualty of war. And this is a war that we're in right now. This is a war for your mind, for the war of the consciousness of mankind. And if they can manipulate and put everyone in a state of fear, that's why this is the side. When people, I mean, I had friends that came by the house yesterday of my mother's, and they're older, they're in their 70s, 80s, and they are absolutely terrified.
Yeah.
Right. And that is what is completely unacceptable.
A lot of people are scared, and that's not right.
And if it's all this has been done through false, information that's been brought out here, because again, the numbers are not showing. If you've got a pandemic, as I said to Hugh the other day, I'd be shoulder to shoulder with Justin Trudeau and Doug Ford. If I'm seeing 10,000 people a day, that's what is a pandemic should be happening. 1,000 people a day dropping dead. Not that I'm looking for that, but that is a pandemic. And the World Health Organization, WHO, changed the definition of pandemic right on the podium when they started announcing this. What they claim is the definition of pandemic now. This is going to be a pandemic, and don't question us on it.
Well, the other thing, too, is that, instead of pretending that the government knows what it's doing all the time about everything and pretending that they've got the situation under control and they are going to provide the solution to Canadians, I think a better approach would be to open it up to Canadians and say, look, let's work together.
Yeah.
Who wants to step forward and help deal with this crisis, right? Because I'm sure if they were able to do that, the thousands of people that just don't have the fear of the virus, and are able-bodied and community-minded would step forward and say, I'm going to go to the hospitals, and if it's really as bad as they're saying it's going to be, I'll be there to help, right?
Yeah.
But they're not doing that. They're closing, essentially shutting the private sector down, making everyone dependent on the government, and just creating a climate of fear. And now it seems to me, and I'm not saying this, but asking people to just watch out for it, that it's just an escalating taking away of our fundamental rights, right?
It's a one-way conversation that's going on right now from the controlled media with the Service Corporation Canada and the Service Corporation Ontario provinces. That is what is going on right now, and you're absolutely right. We need to engage this conversation properly. All right, if you're going to be telling us and you're shutting down an entire economy, then you're going to answer the questions here, right? They should be able to tell us why is the mainstream media not reporting where this actually came from, And I'm just going to say this big picture.
Go ahead.
I'm just going to say this big picture that Hugh talked about the other day. Okay, if we're talking about world dominance, and if there's this group of people that want to do something, you need to understand something. China is part of the central bank system. Mm-hmm. This is what my research has shown. What it is pointing to is that they've had a run in the United States with the Federal Reserve being there since 1913. They've now, over the last year, through my research, they've started to move shop over to China. So if China wanted to take out one of the greatest countries in the world, North America, let's face it, they are the strongest nation in the world, military and economically, everything. Think about that type of larger world, long-term world domination picture. If China wanted to do something like that, could they create a false flag? Because as you said, we get conflicting reports. Some people are saying that what we're being reported on in Wuhan, China is no different than the stage events that they did over here, you know, filming things like bombings that are going on in Afghanistan or Syria, and the white helmets went in there to race when there was none of that occurred. When you start to learn these things. So if China wanted to take over the world, so to speak, or get a real control on it, what a wonderful way through this psyops to do that. Look at the United States right now. It's on its knees.
Well, you know, and I don't even know if it's China who wants to take over the world.
Exactly.
But look how quickly China's gone from being I'm talking about 1970, right? It was a very poor country, struggling to reconstruct itself after being absolutely devastated in the Second World War and in all the, you know, the power fights, right? To now being the manufacturing center of the world. And the way I see it, just the vibe I get, they didn't do that alone. They got help. Like somebody was just helping them at maximum speed to super industrialize and being the world's manufacturing center. So it's like, it's not a Chinese decision to try to take over the world economy, but it seems to be a strategy by, you know, whoever is the less than 1%, that they're changing the game now. They can't have, the United States stands for individual freedom and sovereignty, right? They can't have that. So they're deindustrializing the United States and essentially taking power away from them. And they're putting it into a culture that is kind of more open to kind of just taking orders from somebody else. Right?
I would just like to come in here and point out, just coming back to what Chris said a few moments ago, the World Health Organization, actually, I'm just looking at a Vox article here, and they still haven't, it's dated for March 11, 2020, and still at that point would not call the coronavirus a pandemic. And as far as they went, and they said the threat of a pandemic has become very real, with the WHO director, General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, and I probably did not say that correctly, but he said that on Monday. And they did stop short of calling the situation an actual pandemic. And yeah, people can find that on Vox. And the name of the article is Why the WHO Waited to Call the Coronavirus a Pandemic. So just coming back to what Chris had said, they're even not confirming it as a pandemic, when I was looking at something else written in 2010, and they talked about why H1N1 was a pandemic.
Yeah. And George Webb has totally blown apart the WHO. He's exposed that top man you were speaking about. He's been involved in viruses and genocides in other countries.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, I did some research on him, and he just seems like a born bureaucrat, and with a less than stellar track record in his native. I think he's Ethiopian or Somalian, I think.
Yep. You mentioned, Ivy, the report that whatever who's just released out. Well, last week, I believe it was the beginning of last week, the UK government medical department has released saying that COVID, this whole thing, is not a threat. Right? Yep. And yet that didn't make the news. Their actual medical people have said, no, this is no longer a threat to our country, blah, blah, blah. Well, then why are they still enforcing all these rules and things, right? Why? What is behind this? And that's why I say it goes back to who just got the $4 trillion and where did it go? It immediately went to all the banks that are insolvent. That's what people need to focus on. We've been told that we needed this money to protect the world, right? To protect the economy. Wait a minute, you just took $4 trillion and right away to the central banks, because that's what people got to see. They've got to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to say, like, just for people to think about this for a minute. In 2008, when they had the big bank bailout, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, of course, they had all that, the ninja mortgages, right? So they built all those homes, and the people were actually living in those homes. Now, what they could have done when they did the bailout, they could have bailed out the people. And the people could have continued to live in those homes, which were already built, okay? But they could have continued to pay their mortgages, right, to those banks. But instead, they bailed out the banks. Those people were left, they had to move out of their houses. Homes were left sitting empty, unused while people were living on the streets, right? So, don't bail out the banks, bail out from the bottom up, right? And so I think people really need to think about that and hold the governments, Trudeau and Ford and Trump and everybody, hold the governments accountable. They need to serve the people, not serve the people that finance their elections.
Yeah, just coming quickly, guest on CBC Radio yesterday, his name escapes me unfortunately, but he was being interviewed by Carol Off in the afternoon, and I'm sure people can find the interview on CBC, but he was pointing out that the bank, talking on the bank topic, of course, but that the banks are fully aware. Anyone who has ever filed their income taxes, not just counting this, like forget this year for 2019, but the previous years, they know what a small business owns, whether you're bringing in 20, 40,000, 100,000 a year. And there is no, and the guest that was being interviewed by Carol Off was pointing out, I just caught the end part of the interview, but pointing out that right now the banks are saying you can go online, fill out an application, and then they will see about helping small businesses during this time. And the guest was saying that that's not good enough, and that that everything does link into the fact that the banks, that our money cannot be lost, and there's no reason why the banks cannot help and bail out. It's not even a bailout term. They have the security in order to make up for the losses sustained during this time that small businesses are suffering. Does that resonate with you?
Well, I would love to do a show, because you've talked about this. You keep using the word bailout or whatever, and people do not understand who is being bailed out.
Yeah.
And I would love to do a show on this, Hugh, because I'll explain to everybody why no one in this country owns your property, why every single mortgage that is out there today is all based on fraud. So when you're talking about bailouts, that's a whole separate discussion of facts that people don't know. That's why you need to understand who is getting bailed out in the United States. Okay. It's a service corporation called the United States. It's not the United States of America. See, people don't understand. This is very deep stuff that you learn from Anna von Reitz. She's a past common law judge of the United States. Great information, but I would love to do a show just on mortgages. Okay, so that people can understand how, when they've gone and purchased a house or a car or a boat or whatever, how it is on title, you think you own this, is not yours. So all this bailout money that's going out or whatever, it's to these corporations. You need to understand the system behind the terminologies that they're using. And unfortunately, if you don't know this stuff, it goes over everybody's heads. And I'd love to do a real simple show for people to understand that. And it is important. It is important right now at this time, because we're talking about billions of dollars are going to be thrown into this country. Where did the Service Corporation Canada get these billions of dollars from? They borrowed it from who? They're not using our central bank. So this is what people need to understand. They need to understand the power that we all ultimately hold. Again, there's a huge part on my website surrounding the Bank of Canada. So please, educate yourself, people. That's the most important thing right now. Ignorance is our greatest enemy right now. And they've done a brilliant job. I tell everyone, I take my hat off to these people that have put this incredibly corrupt system all around us, because they have totally mastered, manipulation. And when you control the money in the media, it's not too hard, right? So that's why we have to push back with the truth. I'm all for engaging. You think the CBC would have a guy like me on, and George Webb or Hugh or whatever, at a round table with people that really have the knowledge, and we could actually have a real conversation with the whole country live? They will never do that, because that will bring the truth forward. And that's when the people will realize this massive corruption that's all around us, but they will also see how simple it is to change. And that's our public courthouse. People need to understand the common law. And that's where it's at, Hugh. I haven't changed what I've said, because after all the research I've done for the 20 years, okay, that is where the solution has come back to. Because once the people have access to that public courthouse, we collectively, we can take care of all this wrong and harm.
Hey, I got an idea, Chris. I found an old abandoned courthouse in Hamilton that we might be able to use.
That would be wonderful. That would be, something like that.
Better than the real courthouses, except for the Osgood Hall ones. They're nice, but
they're beautiful.
You go to a new courtroom in Nova Scotia or anywhere. There's Trailer Park episodes where Ricky gets to smoke and swear in court, and That's not a very good looking courthouse.
No,
Right?
no.
Anyways.
Actually, it probably really represents it represents the actual law that's being applied in this country today.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not law, it's legal, and people need to learn the difference. And when that light goes on, it's like, oh my goodness, you know.
Okay.
It's really simple for us, you know, and that's why I thank both of you, because these simple conversations, I don't have to use big words with people, you know. It's common sense that you need to look within you. You need to understand what's really going on and believe in your fellow man, because there's an enormous amount of love that's out there in this world. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's not about money, Hugh. As I've told you, I will come on your show 24 hours a day, 7 days a week if I have to help this country, to help my fellow man. But I'm also telling everyone, I do have the solution here with the casework that I've already got in place. People need to understand the common law, and our public courthouses have been corrupted. That's what we've got to restore, because as soon as that gets restored and all this melee that's going on, we can do it quickly in a couple of months. Bring the consciousness up of people. That's how we, the people, fight back honorably, courageously, but we do it lawfully. Right?
Yeah.
That's where the fighting occurs, is at the courthouse. It doesn't happen with me arguing with somebody in a TV interview, and it doesn't achieve anything. Right? We've got to bring the facts out into the light where the world can see it and have it sworn under oath or affirmation. You get these people to raise their right hand. I'm raising it too. I'm there under full commercial liability. And let's see where the chips fall.
Now, Hugh, I think you have to wrap up. And Chris, absolutely, just want to say to people, the thing that you've touched right on the topic, it is simple. And the strongest thing that we have going for us as civilians is to stay connected and stay together, because being divided and being afraid of one another, being afraid to congregate, whether in public space, like, I'm not telling people to not abide by what's being put out there, but I'm pointing out the nefariousness of instilling fear within the population. And we have to be vigilant of what will happen in 4 or 5 months of conditioning, where people are afraid to come together on a one-on-one level and are only communicating digitally. I think that's a strong fear to have, because a divided people is a weak people, and I just want to have people think about that.
That's why we have to start gathering en masse in public. That's how you show the system that, wait a minute, we are not your property. You do not control us. I'm a big boy, okay? I'm a man, all right? And thank you very much. If there's a virus out there that I need to be aware of, thank you very much for bringing that to my attention. But guess what? It is my decision, okay, whether a vaccine is going to be put in me or whether I stay at home or not. If I'm not causing wrong or harm to my fellow man, you have no right to all of a sudden trample over all of our rights of the people.
Exactly. And not only that, but the government they're the ones that, if that's going to be a problem, they need to protect our rights. So they need to have put in place prior, if they need to stop the pandemic, they need to put in place the mechanisms by which people can still exercise their free rights as human beings.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, they're admitting a massive failure, and they're getting us to pay the price for it.
Yep. And that's what's going on in the United States. You know, Barr, the attorney general there, he's removed what? Habeas corpus. That hasn't been done since Lincoln. For people that don't know what that means that the police can arrest you without any cause or reason, and they can hold you indefinitely without even taking you before a judge.
Okay. Listen, guys, we're going to wrap this up here. People can follow up by going to Chris's website, thewarriorcalls.com. Chris, you and I are going to work behind the scenes to set up a few more shows, keep this conversation going. Ivy, tremendous job. Tremendous grasp of the issues.
Thank you, Ivy.
And I've got this video. This is the video that they took off of YouTube. I'm going to play it right now. This is really going to, I think, sum up for people. And I see Daryl's just joining us here backstage, but I'm not going to bring him on. I'm going to play this video. Daryl, but pay attention to this video. In fact, everyone.
And what is the video about for our viewers? One more time.
It's going to really sum up how the 5G relates to the coronavirus and the pandemic and the lockdown and everything else like that. And then Daryl, we can have a conversation after that. So I'm going to play this video now. Let me know if the audio is not playing. I was having a little trouble with this yesterday. So how do I do this? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I'm going to go over like this now.
There we go.
And here's the video. And then, guys, if we could all just turn your mics off. You can stay backstage, and we'll continue talking.
Yeah, for sure.
your online or athlete. But this is a 34-minute video. So
And everyone, thanks for tuning in once again, thatchannel.com with Christopher James.